Hi guys, this is Mrs. Liz Check here. I am so excited about getting into this first lesson on World War One with you. The one thing that I'm not excited about is the fact that I am not going to be there with you to go through this and answer those questions that you might have. If you have any questions about what is we're going over in the lectures or just questions in general about World War One, please feel free to come to the office hours, and I'll have a link for you on the website so you can come and drop into my office hours Wednesday and Fridays, 1 to 3 o'clock. And if it need be, a little bit later if it doesn't accommodate your schedules. World War One is considered one of the most one of those events in history that we will never forget. It was called the Great War, the war to end all wars. Now remember, they said that before World War II came out. So the Great War is a key term that is still being used today, even though World War II was quite a bit larger than World War One. But we use those lessons from World War One in just about every day in our society here in America, because we have a tendency not to forget those who have fought for our values of democracy, and that's one of the reasons why uh, our soldiers went over to fight later in the war. So, what I would like you to do is, as I am giving this lecture today, I would like you to click through the video and follow along a little bit. Now, as you know, me being an old teacher, okay, because you know I've been doing this for about 21 years, technology and I are not friends. So, I'm learning how to do all this stuff, and hopefully, somewhere along the line, I'll learn how to do the um, you know, little video of me in the corner as you could flip through your videos. I'm trying really hard. I have a camera coming hopefully soon in the mail, so I can get those lessons more what you would call up to date kind of thing. But I'm trying. Okay, I'm doing it because I love you and I want you to succeed. So let's hit the road to World War One. Okay, our first slide in my presentation to you in lesson today is an alliance map of Europe during 1914. Now, an alliance is a word that is used for like a kinship or a friendship. And at this time in history, countries would ally themselves with people that they could depend on for support, either economically, socially, or militarily. And when you form an alliance with another country, you're doing so with an assurance that they're going to come to your help, to your aid if you need it in some way. And so, if there's a national disaster, um, you know, are you going to come help me? You know, just like you would if something tragic happened to your life, your friends are going to come in to support you. And so that is the basic uh, philosophy of alliances with countries. So when a country is attacked, okay, then theoretically their allies are supposed to come in and help you defeat the people that attacked them. And so let's look at this map and figure out who the allies are, the alliances in Europe during 1914. Now, 1914 is just about when the war is going to break out. So the red countries, that would be France, Great Britain, Russia, uh, they are called the Triple Entente. That's how that word is pronounced, entente. Say it out loud. Nobody's going to listen. Entente. Entente is a French word that means friendship. And I did check that out with Madame about 10 years ago to make sure that that's what it was. But that's what it means. Now, the green countries are the Triple Alliance, and that's Germany, Austria Hungary, and the Ottoman Empire. The yellow countries that you see on the map, the yellow countries are your neutral countries. Those countries are not allied with anybody, and they are too caught up with their own country's business to be a part of the war. And in fact, Spain was getting ready to fight a civil war within their country, and so there was absolutely no reason for them to be a part of World War One. So I have a question to propose to you. What made it military? What made it unlikely for a war to be fought in Great Britain? So, if you guessed that Great Britain is an island, you are correct. Great Britain is an island. Sometimes we forget about that. And it was very difficult at that time period to get to Great Britain to fight a war on this scale. So the British could get to France by going over the English Channel, but they weren't going to go. Nobody was going to go to Great Britain to fight in this war. It was just too far away. The war was predominantly fought in France, Belgium, and Germany. Okay. Um, where were the countries of the Triple Entente located in relevance to the countries of the Triple Alliance? Okay, if you look at your map, you can see that the Triple Entente is on both the east and west side of the Triple Alliance. It was like an Oreo cookie. Not the most strongest way of fighting a war, having your enemy on both sides. I like to look at it as an Oreo cookie. The cookie part is your Triple Entente, okay, and then the creamy center is your Triple Alliance. And in order to be successful in fighting a war to this magnitude, the Triple Alliance would have to divide their military in half and spend half of it on the side where France was at, and on the other half on the Russian front. And it just was not a good way. They really weakened uh, their troops. What country had the highest estimated numbers of people in their armed services? And think of geography and think of size. Out of all the countries that I named, what country was the largest? If you guessed Russia, you are correct. During this time, there was 1.3 million men in the Russian army. So they was a very strong ally for France to have, because the main argument that happened was that France did not want to give up some land to Germany, and they fought over the same area. It's called Alsace-Lorraine. About every 100 years, they'd have a fight over this area of land. And so when France uh, gained Russia as an ally, that was like golden. They were so excited because, of course, they're going to add 1.3 million people to the battles. So, kudos to the French. One thing I forgot to mention about the island of Great Britain. Um, I'm sorry, I have to divert because again, I'm not in the classroom doing in my groove. Um, is the fact that airplanes were not around. I know somebody out there is probably going, well, why didn't they just, fly over and drop some troops in, the planes at that time were not large bombers, okay, or cargo planes to drop men in. They were just small, they were called dogfighter planes, single-seater planes, and the men in the planes would have these machine guns attached to the tops, and that's how they fight. They fight in the sky against each other. All these airplanes fighting against each other, not dropping plane bombs on um, sites down below and targets down below. So it was quite interesting. One of the most famous fighter pilots of that time was the Red Baron. So it's not just a pizza. Okay, it actually was a person, the Red Baron. What was the estimated sizes of the armies of the Triple Entente versus the Triple Alliance into 1914? Um, Now, please remember these are estimates. Okay, I do not have the exact numbers because it's very difficult to get the exact numbers on countries that you're not friends with. Okay, at this time, and so the Triple Alliance had approximately 1.5 million people in their army versus the Triple Entente, who had 2.5 million people in the country. I mean, in their armed services. And also remember, 1.3 million of the 2.5 million people in the armed services just was from Russia alone. So that's crazy numbers. So going into it, you could safely say that the Triple Entente had a stronger chance of being the winner in this war just because of location, just because of the numbers of people in the service, just because of the resources that these countries had. If we were in the classroom and we had a couple of weeks to study the war, we'd be getting into the grapes of the war. And I know a bunch of you guys are eye rolling me right now, but the geography, religion, achievements, politics, economics, and social structure at the time in each one of these countries, man, it impacted the way this war was fought. Okay, but we really don't have time to go into those this week. Academic vocab terms. These are terms that Mr. Elliott and I agree on that you need to know uh, prior to going any further into World War One lessons. So our first ones are the sides. You have to know which countries were on which side during the war, because it's not only beneficial for you right now, but also when we get into World War II, you're going to need to know it because it is. That's why they call it World War II. It's the same countries fighting against each other, and we'll get into why on a couple weeks on that one. But the countries that were in the Triple Alliance are quite easy to remember. Um, I like to look at it. If I was teaching this to second graders, I would say the Triple Alliance. You know, the bad guys. That would be Germany, Austria, Hungary, Italy, and I would also add the Ottoman Empire to this one. Second, second alliance would be the Triple Entente. That would be the good guys, and I would put down Russia first. Then I would put down France and then Great Britain because pure size and interest into the war. Do you notice one country that's missing? If you said the United States, you are correct because we were not in the war until in 1914. We were an isolationist country. We were successful about 16, 17 years prior to this war, fighting in the Spanish American War, and that was fought in Cuba. And again, we didn't have time to go into that war, but we were successful in that war. Um, but we weren't quite ready to go to that large scale fighting that was anticipated across the Atlantic Ocean, World War One. We needed to have a good reason to go into the war. And if you paid attention to Mr. Taylor or Mr. Elliott's U.S. history classes, you should remember the reasons why the United States were lured into the war. But we will review that in a little bit later. Conscription is just a fancy term for the draft. Okay? All countries had some form of conscription at this time. They needed the manpower to fight a war of this size. And so, a good extra credit question for anyone paying attention to the video today would be sending me a brief description of each of the conscription laws of each country during the war. Um, Now, remember, Russia, it was expected to be a part of the war, so that's why they had 1.3 million men enrolled in the war. But what was the conscription of the other countries? And as you can see, the political poster on the side, Great Britain, they had the same "I want you" poster as we have here in the United States at that time. It's kind of funny. This one came out before our Uncle Sam came out. Um, we got the idea from Great Britain. Now I want you to move on to the next slide, which is the a political cartoon. I want you to study it really carefully. And I want you to look at what was the main point of this political cartoon. So I want you to think back to how to read a political cartoon. Some of you are going to need it for the SAT. Now, just because you didn't take it in April when we got back from spring break, doesn't mean you're excused from it. You will be taking it in the fall, so you got a little bit more time to practice for that big test. Now, I want you to study the cartoon. Look at it. The first thing you would have to look at is the title. Okay, and in the title, as you know, the first thing I noticed when I saw this political cartoon years ago, I'm like, it's in a different language. So how the heck am I going to know what's going on in this political cartoon? I know that's what Gage is thinking right now. He's thinking, let's check. We don't speak this language, so how the heck can we figure out what's going on in this cartoon? You can figure it out. Now, some of you have had French or Spanish before. This is not French or Spanish, but it's close. So you might be able to figure out what the verb is in that sentence. So if you were in a French or Spanish class and you still have it stuck in your melon, you might be able to figure out what the verb is. And if you can figure out what the verb is, you're ahead of the game. But then if I'm going to go like, hey, I don't know what that says at the top. I'm going to go look at the picture. And I can obviously see a woman in the middle being pulled in two different directions. Just thinking about my lecture previously, okay, we know that, there's countries being pulled um, in different directions just by looking at the map. But the woman in the middle, she is wearing a dress that is atypical of the time, but not colored like the time. It's colored like a flag. So if you can think of a nation's flag that has the colors of green, white, and red, and if you've been to this type of restaurant before, you probably saw that flag in that restaurant. What country do you think this lady is representing? If you guessed Italy, you are correct. And then if you look on each side of the Italian woman, you can see that there are four very distinguished men pulling. Okay, and how you can distinguish them apart from each other is from their clothing and what they're wearing. And you can see that there's a gentleman in the background wearing a fez. Okay, for those Doctor Who fans, you know what a fez is. Okay, that would represent the Baltic or the Ottoman Empire. Then you have the gentleman wearing a pith helmet. And a pith helmet is a helmet with a spike on the top. That gentleman's representing Germany. Then there's a gentleman wearing no hat and he's wearing a coat with tails. Okay, that is atypical of Great Britain. And then you have the gentleman in the back who is representing France. Okay, so then you have Italy being pulled by people representing the two allies of World War II, the two sides of World War I, excuse me. What this political cartoon is telling you is Italy is stuck in the middle. Italy, prior to the war, 1914, was on the side of the German and Austro-Hungarian empires because they had that kinship. They had an agreement. They had trade deals with this country, and they relied on them for financial reasons. And they were afraid to break that alliance to join France and Great Britain, who they truly agreed with in the going into the war. And so they were being pulled into two different directions. So at the beginning of the war, they were fighting with uh, Germany, Austria-Hungary, the Ottoman Empire. And then when things aren't going too well for them, they decided to switch sides. And they switched and they joined the Triple Entente. So that's what that cartoon is, that political cartoon is depicting. Um, Now, I think is a funny short video on the causes of World War One. It's called Back in the Day, and it's really funny. And I hope you give it a chance. It's maybe I think it's less than 5 minutes long, but it will give you a good, funny description of what happened, the build up to the war. Now, a lot of people think, oh, the assassination of Franz Ferdinand was the cause of World War One, which makes me cringe every time I hear somebody say it because that is not the cause. That was the catalyst of the outbreak of the war, but not the cause of the war. In the next lesson on Thursday, you're going to learn the main causes of the war, but um, that wasn't the cause of the war. It was the one event that started everybody moving and fighting, but it took years of build up to get to the actual war itself. So when I get back with you on Thursday, I expect you to be prepared to outline these steps of World War One, the causes of the war, and you can get those from watching this really funny, kind of cute video called Back in the Day. Now, I hope you know that I love you, and I'm hoping that you are safe and healthy. And I cannot wait to actually be in the same room with you teaching again. So, see you Thursday.